One. Hello and welcome to My First Million Live with Ravi, where we talk to accomplished individuals from all over the world and learn from them their success secrets. Today I'm thrilled to have with me Beri Meric, founder of Ivy, which is a social university, a very unique concept at that. And Today I'm thrilled to have with me Beri Meric, founder of Ivy, which is a and the reason you heard that echo was because my live podcast channel was on parallelly in the different tabs. I closed it now. So let me repeat my introduction to Beri. Beri is the founder of Ivy, which is a social university. Very unique concept as I came to know, but social university as a concept is still new. We'll get to learn from Beri himself. But Beri has shaped the idea for Ivy when he was at Harvard. Prior to Ivy, he worked at Morgan Stanley in mergers and acquisitions and strategy. He's also the chapter chair for YPO mentoring. I'm going to also ask about what YPO is in New York. So let me pull Beri onto the screen.
Hi, Ravi.
Hey, Beri. How are you doing today?
Really good, thanks. Happy to be here.
Same here, Beri. So I'm very, very excited to have you. As I said, very thrilled. I got to research a bit about Ivy, and I was blown away by what you have been able to pull out from thin air into this massive network of people and the kind of impact that you have already brought in. And let's use this conversation to learn a bit about Ivy. But before that, I gave a brief intro of yours. I would love to know a little bit about your background story, your growing up years, your years of influence, what influenced you, what shaped you towards become the kind of person that you have become today.
Yeah, very happy to share. So I was born in Istanbul, Turkey,
Nice.
and to an entrepreneurial family. I grew up there until I was 11 years old, and then my family moved to Scotland, to Glasgow. And so I found myself in Glasgow. I didn't speak the language. I was the only foreigner in my school. So it was a really tough crucible moment for me. Like, it was the kind of experience that really made me who I am. It took me quite a while to adapt and adjust, and eventually I did. And that experience really taught me that as long as you're willing to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting with other people, you can really adapt to any situation, including moving to a totally different country where you can't even speak for the initial moment. So
what age was that? What age was that when you moved to Glasgow?
I was 11 years old.
11 is crucial. It's tough.
Yeah. So, and then by the time I left Scotland, so at age 17, I adapted to the point where people couldn't even tell I wasn't Scottish. So that was great, and that really was formative for me also, because it made me like kind of get out of the bubble I would have been in if I just lived where I was born.
Right.
So I wasn't quite Scottish or Turkish, but it made me think a lot more globally. Really got me to study a ton of history, which is my favorite subject ever. And yeah, I was motivated to just like figure out how can I make the best positive impact I can on the world in this short period of life that we all get to have. So from there, I moved to the US for college. I studied at Brown University, worked at Morgan Stanley after, then went to Harvard Business School for my MBA. And through that journey, studying in the US, I love that experience. It was actually relatively much easier to adapt because this is an environment where all day long, when you're in school, you're learning from leading minds, you're dreaming about the future, you're surrounded by incredible peers who all they want to do is learn together, dream together, have a ton of fun together. And that's every day, right? And once I graduated from undergrad, I worked, then I came back to business school. That's when I got the idea with Ivy, together with a classmate. We really thought about like, hey, so if people thrive so much in this collegiate environment where they're surrounded by amazing peers with great thought leaders, and anything seems possible, and everyone is focused on like how they want to elevate their lives and how they want to elevate their impact on the world, why does that end when you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, or like if you're doing a PhD and you're in your 30s? Why can't that continue? So that was original idea and inspiration for Ivy.
Got it, got it, got it. And the term Ivy comes from Ivy League, and you wanted to stretch and not just give the meaning only to Ivy League colleges, which has a stipulated time, fixed time, but you wanted to stretch the meaning of Ivy into a lifelong program, isn't it?
Uh, Perhaps subconsciously in some ways like that. In other ways, it was just like when we were thinking about the original concept, like create a community of inspired and inspiring individuals who want to make a big impact in the world. And like the name just like material like Ivy, like that's what it should be called. It wasn't zero market research.
Right. Yeah.
Just like with a bunch of stuff in entrepreneurship, you can be very intentional with some things, but the original idea and concept and sometimes the name, it just like, it feels right. Also, even the Ivy League schools, like the reason it's called the Ivy League is also because of the, the plants that grow on the walls of these older buildings.
I
So
see.
even the Ivy League itself, so there is also something about the ivy plant, right? It's a lot of growth. It's also very intermingled. It's like wraps things around and interconnects. So there is something very powerful about that word too. Again, I'm not gonna pretend that like we did like crazy amounts of market research to come up with the perfect name. It just felt like, maybe for the same reasons the Ivy League chose that terminology. But yeah, that was the story behind the name.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. So why don't you tell a bit more about what does one get in Ivy as a member? Which cities can one join from? Maybe a little more detail would help.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Ivy, our mission and purpose, it's all about enabling everyone who's participating in our community to unlock their potential, so become their best selves, and also to unlock the potential of others. So it's a journey of like self-improvement, but even more importantly, it's about improving the world. And a kind of a phrase I live by that informs everything we do at Ivy and everything I do in my life is tikkun olam. It's like a Hebrew phrase. It all means elevating the world. Every situation, every moment, every person you come across, how do you leave them better than you found them? So that's the overarching mission and the purpose of our community. And what our community enables everybody to do is to really supercharge their performance and well-being at an individual level. At the same time, it helps them also supercharge their ability to lead and to manage, to grow, to innovate, and ultimately to make that broader impact. So the way it all works is, our audience consists of, on the one hand, the leading minds of our time. So every month we host 12 individuals, leading CEOs, number one experts in different areas and fields, Olympic gold medalists, you name it. So we have those thought leaders who we learn from.
Right.
And then we have these organizational leaders. On the one hand, the CEOs of these amazing companies, big and small. And then it's all the rising stars, the people who are on the path of getting there. So that's our audience. And what they all get out of it is this ability to better unlock their potential. And the way it's structured also is that we have our individual membership where individuals can sign up. And over the last 2 years, where we've been growing the most is also organizations can sign up. So from the CEO down to the most, like the up and coming manager, everyone can take advantage of this as an organization. So it really depends on, whether you're engaging organizationally or individually. But what everybody gets access to is essentially an executive leadership program through Ivy, where there's a core curriculum and an elective curriculum. So the way the core curriculum works is that every month is paired with one learning theme. At the beginning of the month, everybody receives a module on that to consume. They have a month. It takes only 60 minutes. And then at the end of the month, you have this deep peer-to-peer connection and conversation on how you're going to turn the learning from that module into changing your life and in your organization, and how you can support each other doing that. So that's the core curriculum with monthly themes. And then on top of that, we have our elective curriculum, which is these 12 live mentoring sessions every month, where live you can get to know these thought leaders in person, ask them questions, and then a learning library of 200 modules of previous events that we've hosted, where you can go back and filter for exactly what you're looking for. So it's a mix of that like intentional monthly one focus combined with this self-serve, any area where you most need support in elevating your life to get there as well.
And how do you choose the monthly theme? Is it something that is decided by you, or it is community driven? How do you pick up a theme for the month?
Yeah, so for every organization that we work with, right? So we really get to learn what are their key needs, key priorities, key challenges, key opportunities. And based on that, we create this custom core curriculum where each module is paired with their key priorities. And most companies want to, of course, supercharge their people's performance and well-being so that people can really perform at the highest level. And then at an individual membership level, or whether your company joins Ivy or you join individually, you can also create your own core curriculum, right? So then based on your priorities, each month is paired with one specific module for you. But of course, you also have the elective curriculum where you've got a dozen new live things to choose from every month, plus the couple hundred previous ones that could be helpful to you as well.
So is this all virtual medium, or do you also have physical meetups and events? Or is it a hybrid model, so to say?
Yeah, well, prior to COVID, it was almost entirely in person with a little bit of digital. During COVID, it obviously was 100% digital, and interestingly, that enabled us to go from being just in 8 cities to now we're pretty much in every country in the world, both organizational and individual memberships, because of course the beauty of virtual is you can be anywhere and still benefit from absolute world-class thought leadership and mentoring and so forth. So and then now that the world is opening up in many countries, and hopefully in all countries over the coming months and year, hopefully, we will also do in-person gatherings as well. And like every other company out there, we're figuring out what is the smartest way to do that, right? So in the past, we had at our peak, 1,000 in-person events a year. I do believe that for all businesses, for all organizations and all communities, I do believe hybrid is very smart because people have their own schedule, they're moving around. So nothing beats in person for a certain type of connection. At the same time, nothing beats scalable technology for being able to access anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Exactly.
So the hybrid, I believe, is the way forward.
So that's the trade-off. Are you in Europe as well? Because I'm in Germany. I'm just curious to see if you have a presence here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all across Europe. We've got members and organizations who are part of our program.
Nice. Excellent. So I'm always an admirer of entrepreneurs who are able to translate the vision into actual a financially sound reality, and you have pulled it off. And that's exactly. I mean, my conversations usually are about people who are shaping their vision into reality. So help me understand. Just curious, when you decided when the idea was conceptualized, has it changed much into what it is today, or it is exactly how you had envisioned?
Let me answer this in the following way. It's both. So what has never changed is the intention behind the organization. That to unlock potential and enable people to be the best versions of themselves is a really noble goal. And it's something that everybody wants for themselves and their loved ones. And our formula for unlocking potential, which is a combination of learning on the one hand and deep connection on the other hand, that has never changed. And I very strongly believe that's what it takes. The more we learn and the more we connect at a truly actionable way, the better we can unlock our potential. So that's never changed. Everything else about how we do what we do, everything has continuously changed and will continue to change. I mean, that is for certain, because as we all know, the entrepreneurial journey, it's just, you're learning a lot on 2 levels. You're learning really how the world actually works, what people really want. And also you're learning, what do you really care about, you and your team? What are you actually what's really core to this endeavor? And that's actually you have your initial answers to those questions,
right,
but then you have your evolving answers as like your idea meets reality.
right,
The answers evolve. But I think for me, like the conviction on the ethos of the idea of like transformative learning and connection never changes. Like that, and by the way, that conviction actually, I do believe like, yeah, perseverance, hard work, all of this is table stakes. It's all very, very important.
right,
But the most critical ingredient, in my view, and I've thought a lot about this for myself and the entrepreneurs that I really respect, I really do think conviction is the prime force.
right,
Because when you deeply believe in something, it's like everything else can change, but as long as you have your belief, you'll adapt and you'll change.
right,
But if it's to just to make money, or just because you're trying to get from A to B, if it's
right,
more of a means to an end,
right,
that's much more fragile, I think,
right,
than when you believe in something. You're like, look, I don't even care. Hey, if it doesn't work, that's
right,
fine. The next day I'll start it again and do it a different way.
right,
Then you're basically, as long as you're alive, people can't make you go away because you're
right.
keeping at it. But so I would say that's the piece that's never changing.
Now, good that you brought that up on how it was purpose driven more than anything else. And this is a question that I always ask entrepreneurs, because you just have got one life, one short life at it, right? And you can only do so many things. So how do you decide, and at any given point of time, especially if you are entrepreneurial by nature, there are multiple ideas to chase. How do you decide at any given point of time that this is what I'm gonna commit to at least a good chunk of my life in the next 3 4 5 years? I mean, because there is an opportunity cost at it, right? So maybe there is a better idea that you could have chased. um, so I just wanted to ask, in your formative years, how did you decide to commit to this and not anything else out of all the ideas that you had?
Yeah. Well, there's a deeper conversation to be had another time, probably around choices, right? More broadly speaking. So when we think about, our lives, right? And we think about the most important stuff, right? Like who our
The one thing.
parents are, where we were born, which schools we went to when we were kids, like
Right.
what we look like, what our abilities are. We didn't choose any of this, right?
Right.
So I think the humility and a reminder like that I had to learn the hard way is like the best advice I ever got, probably bar none, is like work as hard as though everything depends on you,
Right.
but never forget for a moment that the most critical stuff, you're not the one deciding. There's, whether you believe in a greater force or just math, like there's 7.8 billion other people making decisions. If
Right.
you think that you just decide, like you don't decide, like you can decide your own things,
Right.
but a lot of the outcomes are a mix of what you decide versus circumstances around you. So with all of that in mind, there are different types of people. What I'm about to say applies to, it's one perspective. So this is not my recommendation for everyone, but for me, I have just gone with what's gotten me excited. What I felt like, well, this is amazing. This is something that I definitely want to pursue because it will help me better achieve my life goals. So, when I got into business school, they had asked your career vision, like, what's your career vision, right?
Mm.
And I very honestly answered, and I got called out for being vague. I said, look, I don't care what industry or what the role is called or whatever, but what I do care about is, can I be creative? Can I have a significant impact, right? And can I in some way be in a leadership position, right? Like those are the key things that I want out of life. How I get there in the end, not as important. So I feel like entrepreneurship gives you a lot of that, obviously.
Right.
So I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, create something out of nothing that makes a big positive difference.
Right.
That's the first decision.
Right.
And by the way, I was much more willing to recommend everyone to become entrepreneurs before I became one myself. Once I became one myself, if you don't have that conviction, like that's really what you want. Like the fact that you could put a decade or two into something and it can be worth nothing. Like if you're not okay with that, right? I think it's not a smart idea to become an entrepreneur because even if you're the best business person with the best idea, best network, it just might be bad timing and it's still a zero, right? Like it can like so I would say that's decision number one. Should you be an entrepreneur or not? And then once you want to be an entrepreneur, And as long as you have an idea that you really think can work and you're passionate and you'll be excited, you'll
Right.
be thankful just for the learning, just for the experience. Like if
Right.
I can just pay the bills and get to do this, I'm
Right.
happy to do it because it makes me a better business person, better human, more impactful.
Right.
I think that's the only key decision. The reality is, whatever your idea is, get ready for it to change 10 or 100 times. Even
Right.
if you're successful, it's going to keep evolving.
Right.
So, I would just say, like, from a decision tree, binary. Do I really want to be an entrepreneur? Yes, no. Knowing it can be result in nothing other than just the experience itself.
Right.
And then two, if you do, are you truly excited about an idea, or are you just
Right.
doing it to make a quick buck? Because if it's
Right.
the quick buck, you're gonna blood, sweat, and tears for years. Like, that's true entrepreneurship with
Right.
absolutely no certainty of the outcome. So as long as the idea excites you like that, go for it. But
Right.
also know that the idea is going to change a million times anyway. So
Got it.
just take the leap and go for it if you have those two questions as an affirmative yes.
Got it. But did you have any other idea to compete with, or this was the only one thing that somehow your heart was pulling into?
Well, it was the best idea I had at the time. But like I said, it's how we deliver what we do is like different in every way, right? Like, so, I mean, quite literally, even over COVID, we went from being, heavily like B2C individual membership to now like more than half like B2B and organizational memberships.
Right.
That wasn't in the original idea, but it's
Got
still the same ethos. So yeah, no, I didn't have a better. If I thought I had a better idea, I would have probably gone for that one.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's. Because I'm so passionate about
Right.
delivering this to the world, it's enabled me, I think, to evolve and adapt.
Got it.
Whereas I would have had 1,000 opportunities to commit if this was something just to make money. Like it would have been too tough to keep going if it was just about the money, I think.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. Yeah. I mean, so what you're saying is there is conviction, there is purpose, but also there is some amount of leap of faith, because definitely you do not know how things will turn out. So, and then there is this tenacity to keep it going for years on without thinking so much about the outcomes and money and stuff like that, isn't it? The foundation is the purpose and how much you want to bring impact. And I think if this is taken care of, money is automatically taken care of, isn't it? Would that be fair to say?
Yes. And I would just add to that to say, like, this isn't just entrepreneurship. I would say any leader, anyone in a leadership position, right? Like when you're on the field, right? Like it's just possible that you could like not make it, right? Like that's just the nature of reality. So Fortune 500 companies, right? Billions of dollars of budgets,
Right.
thousands of the smartest people on earth. Guess how many are going to be around a couple decades from now? Or how many are going to be in the Fortune 500? And how many of them will even be like existing in 50 years from now?
Right.
A huge number will go away. So it's not like there's certainty in other things.
Right.
So when you're at the helm of an organization,
Right.
there's a very real chance that something happens tomorrow and you're put out of business.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the leap of faith, I think, that's all of life. Any initiative, if you want to be an artist, like they're absolutely, I've never come across something with a guaranteed return.
Right.
Other than, I guess, like a government bond. So if you're happy with the, whatever 1% a year,
Yeah.
I think that's or it depends on the government, I guess, 1 to 5%. But if you want these like high impact, high return, then it's always going to be high risk, high uncertainty.
Got it. So why don't you share with us a few behind the scenes story on your journey of building Ivy? So like in my last episode, I was talking to a friend of mine who has built Asia's largest preschool network, close to 1,200.
Wow.
And today he's the leader in preschool network. However, he told his story when he waited for 3 months in his first preschool to get a child admitted. He was just sitting there and nobody would come and join his school. And today, after 10 years, he has got 1,200 schools all over Asia. So I just wanted to know, when you came up with this, how did you get your first membership? How did you get the idea through? How did you win the trust of people that, hey, you have something really substantial and valuable to offer. So please help us through with this, because this is the most interesting and the crux of every entrepreneurial venture, the first idea and the first customer.
Yeah, the first idea, first customer, first investor, what goes into that then always goes into every new initiative, every new big thing that you're looking to achieve. It's always the same formula. So again, I'll share mine. I'm not a business school researcher, so I haven't done the longitudinal studies to prove this is the best way. But what's worked always for me as a formula is show people something, right? Share something, even if it doesn't yet exist, and see how excited they are, right? And if enough people are excited, that's when and then also hear their feedback, so then you augment the thing. But it's a bit of a chicken and the egg. People can't react to something if you have nothing to show them.
Exactly.
So the question is, how concrete can you make what you show, right? So that it's as clear as possible, so that they can also give you the best feedback, right? So if I were to say, hey, Ravi, I want to build a community and it's going to have a bunch of inspiring people, what do you think? You'd be like, sounds good, but I got to learn a little bit more about what you're talking about. But if I told you, hey, Ravi, it's going to be a community of inspiring people where every month we're going to learn from 12 of the leading minds of our time, and there's going to be this kind of discussion, and the benefits are going to be in these 4 key areas of life. And this is what will be expected of the participants, and this is what they'll get out of it. What do you think? You would probably say, wow, let me try it out. That sounds cool, and I got to just see it. So I would say to the extent that you can crystallize and make more concrete, not to finalize it, but make it enough that people can give you great feedback, and then you take that feedback and keep refining it. So initially, before building we made this mistake, everybody, a lot of other people I know make it. You have the idea, and what's the first thing you do? You build a website, or you build an app. But even before building an app or a website, it is so much cheaper, so much more effective. Get a graphic designer, right? And mock up pages, like a prototype. It could be even as simple as a PowerPoint that you flip through, but there's a lot of prototyping apps now where visuals feel like an app. You can press the buttons and it moves around. It costs almost nothing, right? I mean, it costs, well, let me put it this way. It costs 0.01% of what it would cost to actually build it out in full in terms of time and effort.
Right.
First of all, working with the designer, you look at what comes out. If you don't love it, first you got to love it. Once you love it, then you show it to people. My method is a lot of one-on-one conversations, 2 people on their own can create their own universe. As soon as you have a third person, there's a bit more of social dynamics, but lots of one-on-ones that help me refine, and then I would share it with groups. So anyways, that's just one way in which to make the idea more concrete, is fleshing it out and designing it out so people can, it really looks real, even though actually it completely doesn't exist, right? But at least you're able to communicate it. The second thing that's super useful is people like things that are tangible. So designs are one thing, slides or prototypes, that's one thing. But people also want to know, especially in a programmatic, experiential type of a community, which, by the way, I would say a preschool is like that too. People want to know, so what's going to happen? What does the calendar look like? What's upcoming, right? So in our case, we didn't have to build 1,000 events to convince people that they should come. All that mattered was, this is the mission, and here's what's coming up next. Come join us there. Come check it out. So you can experience it on your own. So it was all about this upcoming event, and we thought about it very much as a calendar. Well, in a year, how often do we want to do what? In what format? What does that look like? What do we need to, how much will it cost for us to actually do that? And is that actually exciting? So again, people, when you invite someone to an event, they actually have no idea what the event is going to be like. It's the event invitation, the copy, the flyer, and if you want to produce a video, that's all they know until you get there. So the invite is as important as the thing itself. And I think that analogy goes for everything in entrepreneurship. What you show people to get their feedback and whatever, is just as important as like the actual reality and substance of what's going to come out.
Got it. So how was the reaction then? So you went this, you started to get validation from some of your near and dear ones, maybe friends first. Is that how you went out? So you
yeah.
or
Well,
did you go to strangers, or was it friends and family? Because usually what happens whenever you take your idea to friends and family, they are more charitable to your idea. They do not want to disappoint you, and they would say great things about you. But the as they say, the rubber meets the road only when you go and talk to a stranger on the road.
Yeah, great point. I would say first person for this like concept of Ivy and the iteration that I mentioned to you was walking in the meatpacking district on the cobblestones here in New York. I called my brother and I was like, "What do you think?" And he was like, "That's so freaking awesome." And I was like, "Yeah." So then I actually went to my office and I put together these like 10 slides that just like kind of made up what it is. I sent it to our graphic designer. I was like, "Look, this is just a fun idea I have on the set. Don't take it too seriously. Just like, can you make it look beautiful?" Of course, she made it look gorgeous, right? And then I took it to, of course, my co-founder, who, by the way, was at the time like a very, very good friend. So the most charitable people first. Yes, you're right. They're charitable, but at least like you gotta. But they also had thoughts and opinions which I baked in, and then it was a matter of showing both new people and people I knew, and the last 8 years has been a process of constantly showing people new things, getting their feedback, and refining as we go.
So when did you get the tick? When did you get a growth that you felt that what now this is product market fit? Now we have arrived. How long did it take to grow the audience and grow the participants?
Yeah, so maybe some encouragement to those who are listening in on this. I would say we're still we have great traction, we have great members, we have great companies that we serve, but we're still on that path of getting. I wouldn't say we've arrived. I would not say we have the product market fit and now it's just just pump it up and spread it to the whole world. No, it's like a journey, enabling people to unlock their potential. If I told you I got it, we're done, we figured it out, yeah, I don't know if anybody can get there, but it's obviously an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
So I would say we're still figuring it out. But we did always have traction early on, in the sense of we never had an issue where nobody cared, right? That thankfully was never an experience that we had.
Right.
It may have been to do though with the fact that before we launched anything, excuse me, we always quote unquote tested it like crazy. We showed a lot of people. Also, when we launched Ivy, like I said, before COVID, we'd launched in 8 cities. I never called it, not once. We never ever called it a launch. We never did that. Okay. We always said we're going to be launching through a series of events, and the first one is this. No high pressure, no PR, no blowing the budget on some grand thing that you're never going to be able to keep up on a sustainable basis. And that might have been why. So, for example, if anybody here if you think you need a huge, big community to fill a room, let's say with 200 amazing people, I have a surprise for you. You do not need to be super networked. You do not need to have a huge, big community. Any social person, if you're not social, then if you have a social friend who's also excited about, any social person can fill a room of 200 people. The formula is very simple. Exciting theme and topic for the night, or exciting, or the party, whatever it is.
Right.
And, some amount of free booze and bites to eat. Literally, you want to fill a room, pick a good venue, have a great theme, and make sure people can have a drink or have a bite to eat. That's literally what it takes. But of course, there's a huge difference between throwing a fun event and having a world-changing community, which is what we're aspiring to be.
Yes.
But ultimately, when taking that first step, you don't need $1 billion to do that first thing. You actually make it as a quote unquote as cheap an experiment as possible. each one. So then you don't need to, for example, your kindergarten or your preschool friend who you interviewed, if he or she built like 1,200 schools and then was like, oh, I hope people come, that would be crazy. Thankfully, there was one school.
One school.
You just had to wait 3 months to start filling one school, right? So whatever the equivalent of it is, like break it to the smallest pieces and just fill the first room or whatever that the equivalent of it is for your company.
Got it. Excellent. So that's quite smart. So if I may ask, so you said it has taken you 8 years now in the making. Got it.
Probably a bit longer. So it's taken 11 years since I graduated from business school.
Right.
But then, it took about 3 or plus years for the idea to really crystallize into what I described to you. So it's been 8 years though since then.
So what do you think are your biggest lessons in building Ivy, if I may ask you to summarize in these 8-10 years that you have been at it? Your biggest lessons, takeaways?
Yeah, we already covered conviction. So if you don't have conviction, don't do it. But also don't feel bad if you don't have conviction. Just do whatever it takes to help you build the conviction. So if you have an idea, but you're not sure, great. Talk to 10 or 100 people about it. Do you have conviction now? If not, well, don't waste your time. If you're really building conviction, I, by the way, have more conviction now than I ever did in the past because I'm falling more and more in love with the concept because I'm getting better and better at understanding what it is that it takes. So conviction is the key one. I would say that's the most important. That's the foundation. By the way, people can sense it. Customers, investors, colleagues, everybody wants to be around conviction and belief, deep belief, right? People follow Elon Musk not because of his HR policies and how relaxed it is. People follow him because he has deep conviction in what he's doing, and therefore the whole team has deep conviction in what they're doing. So, okay, I'll move on from conviction. That's number one. Second one is, this is something I learned more recently. We also hit some bumps in the road, and it's going to happen. And there will be things that are quote unquote near-death experiences. You'll hit a bump in the road. You thought you were a hero. You thought you had tons of money on your balance sheet. You thought you had all these customers and growth. You hit one bump. Your revenues dipped, let's say 20%. That doesn't sound like a big deal, right? In COVID, many companies went 100% to zero revenues for a while. But even a 20% dip in revenues can kill you. And the way it happens is this. And this is my I talked about a lot of positive stuff. Let me talk about also the realities, which is as much about. So let's say your revenues are growing like this, which we did. We had 4 years. We doubled our revenue every year, right? Like this, every year it's doubling, right? Amazing. The investors love it. Everybody loves it. And also during that time, our expense base grew just as fast. So we had, and we were fine. We planned for that, and that was good. When you do that, if you have even a 20% different revenues, even if you have millions of dollars in the bank, if you dip by 20% and your cost base grows by 20%, and if you were like this, all of a sudden your burn rate can massively increase. It could quadruple. And you might find out you've only got a few months of cash in the bank left. And guess how many people are as enthused when instead of doubling your revenues just dipped? Not as many people. So I would say, this is business 101. Maybe it didn't get through my thick skull, but I don't really remember anybody grabbing me by the collar and being like, don't ever forget. And this is the one thing that if I could go back in time to tell myself, I would say, when you're building it and you're growing and your revenues are going up, be hyper disciplined. How can I keep up that growth without needing to hire? How can I use technology to empower my people so that our cost base doesn't need to go up? And if it has to go up, can I outsource this? Do I really need to bring this on board? Or that new initiative that costs a bunch of money? Can we do it so that it doesn't cost as much money? How can you make it more scalable so that delta? And by the way, a lot of people who raise money, the investors never push you. They push you on growth. They don't necessarily push you on profitability. Not most investors, anyways, the tech investors. But you have to have that discipline as an entrepreneur, because guess what? If you hit bumps in the road and you're desperate for the investors to give you more money, you're going to lose your business, right? You're going to become a minority in your own business, as opposed to being a master of your own destiny. So I would say that's like a really critical lesson. There are many others, but let me pause there in case, like, you want to wrap up our conversation in a particular way. I want to make sure I focus on that.
No, thank you. That was I think being disciplined was one of the biggest takeaway that I learned from you. Yes, completely true. Because when we look at all the fundings, the mammoth amount of money that is being pumped, nobody is talking about profitability. Nobody is talking about financial acumen, keeping the cost low, and stuff like that. And you are one of the rarest voices somebody has talked about this, touched upon this topic. So thank you about that. I just want to wrap up with two questions. What are your plans next, say in the immediate goals in the next year or 2 years or 3 years? Where do you see this going? And how do you set your life goals, so to say? So these were two last questions for me.
All right. So what you said about discipline, I just want to also, before we move to the final thoughts I'll share now, it's discipline, but it's also just being smart. Like, force yourself to be smarter, right? So everybody obviously who's pursuing to be an entrepreneur, you got to be smart, otherwise you won't even get started. But it's like when you're making those choices this way or that way, if you're really smart, actually a lot of times you can find a third way that, like, how can we deliver a better service and it costs us less to produce? A lot of people will tell you, oh, well, that's just crazy. That's not how things work. You want to do better, it costs more. Well, obviously that's not true, because a lot of, like, Uber was a lot cheaper than regular taxis when it came out. So there are ways to do it. So anyways, let me now transition to the final question you asked me. So next phase for us at Ivy, this concept of unlocking potential, the biggest obsession we have is how do we do that in the most effective global way possible, and in a way that lasts. So my current obsession and realization is this: when you look at the whole landscape, preschools, K through 12, universities, private, public, all that, right? So many people are so fast to criticize all the shortcomings of education, right? It's outdated and archaic, and everybody loves to criticize education, even though obviously it's the most transformative force. And for those who are lucky to have an education, it's the most transformative thing, the highest statistical correlation to the outcome of your life on many, many metrics. So my thinking is this: of course, as all levels of formal education has to keep improving. At the same time, most people will exit formal education, even if it's the best it can ever be. People exit it at some point. Most people then end up working for companies. So the biggest opportunity I see is companies have the biggest economic incentive and the biggest economic opportunity, like bandwidth-wise, to be the providers of world-class lifelong learning. Because they have two things. One, the better their employees perform. The happier their employees are, the more their employees are aligned and retained versus quitting and getting better jobs, the better the company does. But companies can also do one thing that literally governments can't even do, with adults at least most governments in democratic countries. Governments can make you do something that a company can do. If a company says, hey, everybody, you know what? Once a month for 1 hour, we're going to learn and deeply connect with each other. And we're doing it as a company. So if you're working there, don't have to say mandatory, but like if a company decides it's doing that and you're working there, you're going to be doing it. Not even governments can make you learn for an hour a month, right? So, and companies also are practical and pragmatic. Companies are not stupid. They're not going to make you learn about things that make no difference. They're going to make you learn about things that will actually make you perform better and be happier. So that's what I'm excited about, being a world-class partner to companies, to provide this kind of core and elective curriculums that can be transformative. And in terms of my life planning, so a really cool exercise I would recommend to everybody here is as follows. Think of yourself 10 years ago. This is from Benjamin Hardy, who's one of the leading organizational psychologists of our time.
I love Benjamin Hardy.
Think of your life 10 years ago. Okay. and think of your life now. Are you the same person? Absolutely not, right? I mean, everything is different. Now think of yourself 10 years from now.
No.
Any illusion you have that you're going to be anything like you're today is completely and utterly false. You will not be who you are. You will have different preferences. You'll have different priorities. You'll have a different life. The key is to make sure your preferences today, your choices today are the choices that you would make with the preferences that you'll have 10 years from now. So visualizing that 10-year person and making each decision today according to what you in 10 years, like Ravi 2031, that's the person. So, and the best way to do this is think of 3 outcomes 2031, 10 years from now, okay? What are the 3 most important things in your life 10 years from now, the way you visualize it? And then for each of those 3 things, come up with a list of peak experiences related to that outcome and a list of quantitative results related to that outcome. So you have those 3 outcomes, and for each the peak experiences and key outcomes you're looking for. Take just 30 minutes. Don't work on this for weeks or days. Just 30 minutes and write down what are the 3 outcomes and a list of peak experiences and qualitative outcomes you want to have over the next 10 years to get there. And then every day you wake up, look at those 3 outcomes just for 30 seconds. No big deal. Don't meditate on it for like an hour. Just like look at it and make sure every day you're doing one thing as it relates to those 3 most important outcomes. And that's the key. Do I do this perfectly myself? No. But has it been very useful to me doing my best to do this? Absolutely, yes. And that's been a great refining force for me in all areas of life.
That's how you accelerate yourself towards that ideal outcome for the next 10 years. Otherwise, you are distracted if you do not keep your focus on which outcomes you want to hit in the next 10 years. This is a great exercise. Thank you so much. And this is a great way to end this insightful conversation with Beri. I can't thank you enough, Beri, for your time. I know you're a busy man. You're building Ivy to the next level. And I cannot thank you enough. I hope all the success for Ivy. And if there is any way I could help you with this part of the world, don't feel shy in reaching out to me. I'm well connected here. I'm also building a network through my podcast and through my offline activities as well. So I'm happy to offer you any help that I can.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to be here, Ravi. Really enjoyed our conversation and excited to cross paths with you and all your listeners at some point in the near future in person, hopefully.
Thank you, Beri.
Okay, take care. See you soon.